Good evening, everybody. I'm meteorologist Corey Thompson here in the TV9 newsroom. I'm going to give you a little rundown about another threat for some severe storms that we are facing on Tuesday. Some similarities with this storm system to the one that we saw on Friday, which is why we're giving you this early first alert heads up. However, there are some differences too. We'll get into the differences and what that may mean for the outcomes that we see as we head toward the early part of the week. So we'll go straight to graphics now and take a look at the risk for severe weather in parts of the area. We do have some very humid air that will be moving into the region as we start off on Tuesday and Tuesday night. Make sure I have the right thing up here. So bear with me for a moment, folks. There we go. Now we're on track here. Severe weather risk, which we've talked about already today on TV9, is in place again on Tuesday. It's similar looking to the one that we had leading up days ahead of the risk on Friday. It includes much of Iowa in the slightly higher risk area here. The Storm Prediction Center issues these outlooks as long as 8 days in advance. They've had an area for severe storm threat that includes parts of the TV9 viewing area since 6 days out for this. This is 4 days out. So at this point, this is the highest risk category they can issue for this type of outlook, and parts of the state of Iowa are included in it. As we saw last week, that risk area can shift as additional details about the storm do become a bit more evident. At this point, though, this is the best bet we have on where this storm will be headed. It's all because of an area of low pressure that will develop off the Rockies again, very similar into position as the one on Friday, to start off the work week. We'll have the chance for a few showers as we go through the early portion of the work week on Monday, and some clouds that will keep our temperatures down a little bit. That's a little initial impulse, a little disturbance that will be headed our way that day. But the real and stronger storm system arrives into the Midwest by early Tuesday. Some early showers and storms are possible during the day. Similar story like what we saw on Friday, where there could be some overnight activity Monday night into early Tuesday. And then we will likely catch a bit of a break for some more storms develop. The potential is there for a couple of clusters of storms to develop out of this storm system. A lead set of scattered to isolated storms that would move through southeast Iowa and shift to the northeast. A secondary line of storms looks like it may develop along this cold front that sweeps through the area too. That would be perhaps a two-pronged event at that point, where we could see some daytime activity, and then later after dark Tuesday night, some additional activity that could carry a threat, primarily for damaging winds at that point. The initial day activity could carry the threat for damaging winds, tornadoes, and large hail. Similar set of threats as what we saw on Friday. It's all because, again, as we had on the end of this week, the ingredients in place. Moist air will be working its way into the state by Tuesday. We saw those dew points increase to about 60 degrees or so on Friday, enough to make it notably humid for this time of year especially. We haven't had much humid air yet this year, but that is one thing that will be there. But the one thing that is a little different with this storm system is that we saw the entire portion of eastern Iowa get into warmer and humid air. It's because the warm front associated with this may not make it through the entire state. Where that warm front is will be key to seeing how far north the severe weather threat gets and who is at most risk for the potential for stronger storms. So it's that warm front position that we'll have to keep an eye on. The computer models we rely on rather to help make our forecasts have waffled a bit on that position, generally pretty consistent in placing it between about Interstate 80 and Highway 20. Of course, we're still a few days out. This still could change a little bit. The evolution of the storm could be that it moves further north. It also could be that it hangs out near Interstate 80 or just points to the south. But right now, it is this area south of Highway 20 that looks like it will likely get into that more moist air, and thus the bigger threat for some severe storms. Winds out of the surface, too, will be from the south and southeast. And this time, the area of low pressure that will move into northwest Iowa looks like it could be a little bit stronger. And usually stronger low pressure systems mean that we will have a good likelihood of southeasterly winds as it tracks in here. Along and south of that front is where those winds will be in that direction. and that will be one thing to watch out for too. We did see, as storms yesterday moved from central Iowa, where they produced mostly large hail initially, As they moved into eastern Iowa, where our winds at the surface were a bit more southeasterly, they changed from storms that were just producing large hail to storms that could also produce tornadoes. So that's why it's one of those key ingredients. It really increases the wind shear, which is what we look for in terms of a severe weather threat. It's one of the key ingredients. It really increases that at the lowest levels where tornadoes form. Similar story to the Friday storm system. Really strong upper level jet stream will be present. In fact, pretty strong wind speeds up aloft, several thousand feet, of course, but they will be blowing in from the southwest. And that change in direction from southeast to southwest is that wind shear, directional shear, we call it. And that implicitly promotes rather an environment where storms, as they build and they go up into the atmosphere, will go slightly different directions as they do. That's the rotation that can develop in those storms. That's what sustains really strong storms there too. So you combine all of that with enough instability, energy in the atmosphere, so we'll have colder air aloft, warmer air at the surface. Basically, instability measures the ability for air to rise given the chance. It doesn't necessarily mean that air will rise, but if given a little bit of a push, thanks to that area of low pressure or that warm front or the cold front, all three things could promote storms to develop. They'll have plenty of energy to deal with, as temperatures look like they may actually be a little bit warmer on Tuesday than they were on Friday, and dew points will likely be pretty similar. That's the setup. Those are the stakes at play at this point, and that's why the severe weather risk is once again here in eastern Iowa on Tuesday. Now, as a point of review, I want you to be able to get your weather information, and I know that a lot of people on Friday were paying very close attention, and that was great. Helped keep people safe. At this point, we've only had a small handful of injuries despite some very strong tornadoes moving through areas that people live in eastern Iowa from Friday. That's great news, and it's all about taking the right steps. If you do the right thing, you really increase your odds of staying safe and being okay, even if you take a direct hit from a tornado, which even when there is a pretty good risk for severe weather, is very unlikely. So that's why we always tell you to have multiple ways to get your severe weather information. Yesterday, there were a couple of cases where outdoor warning sirens, for example, which some people rely on, didn't have power. And so parts of Washington County weren't able to get those sirens going, according to emergency managers. Other areas maybe didn't get their wireless emergency alerts. And so sometimes those can fail too. So that's why we say have multiple tools in your toolkit. If one of them doesn't work, it's likely that one of the others will. A NOAA weather radio is a great one. The KCRG TV9 First Alert Weather app is a great one. There are many options to get many ways to get alerted for severe weather. You need that all the time. And of course, the sirens are intended to alert you when you're outdoors. It means go inside and find out what's going on in terms of severe weather. They're not necessarily meant to wake you up in the middle of the night and get you alerted. So that is one thing to always remember. We always say that one, but they are a tool for sure that you can use, but it's not always the most reliable. So again, just to review, severe weather safety, when a tornado is threatening your area or even a strong severe thunderstorm, you'll want to go to the lowest level of your home, get under something sturdy, and grab something to protect your head and neck. That's the area that you want to keep the safest. Of course, as storms move through, stay away from outside walls. We had pictures yesterday from the storms that showed exterior walls in homes being damaged by storms, but the interior walls being just fine. That's why we say stay away from them, because that's the first thing to fail generally. Roof, that's the one that's going to go. Second will be the external walls, and then from there, if it's a very strong tornado, it can do more damage from there. But usually most of them fall into the category that is less strong than that. If you don't have a basement, of course, the interior room is the best, but basement is always the best. So it's that lowest area that you want to get to. If a tornado is threatening your area, once a warning is issued, don't hesitate. Once again, like Friday, these Tuesday storms will likely be moving mostly very fast. 50 to 60 miles per hour looks like a good bet once again. With those strong upper level winds, they'll push those storms through the area as they move by. So let's recap just a bit. The risk for severe weather is primarily across the central United States, not very different than the overall areas we outlined leading up to the storm system on Friday. This orange area is what would be considered an enhanced risk of severe weather, the yellow slight from the Storm Prediction Center's terminology. But we are still several days away. So it's one thing to watch out very, very closely. Storm Prediction Center updates this outlook once tomorrow. They'll update it twice on Monday and then multiple times on Tuesday as we go through the day. So we'll bring you the latest on those every time we know them. We'll also bring you the latest information that we know too. Storm Prediction Center is a great tool for us to help coordinate and see those wider risk areas, but of course the local meteorologists provide their local expertise on what may take place in your area. So one more time with that storm system off to the west, moving off the Rocky Mountain states and into the plains, it'll be shifting to the east. Plenty of southerly winds out ahead of it will be moving into the region once that warm front clears the area. So the warm front will be near the Iowa-Missouri border by Tuesday morning. As it pushes to the north, some scattered showers and storms are possible, and then we'll get into that warmer, more humid air, more prone for severe thunderstorm development. As that area of low pressure approaches northwest Iowa, which is pretty close to where it tracked on Friday, that's when additional storms could develop across southeast Iowa. And then later in the evening, perhaps even into Tuesday night, is when more storms could develop along this cold front. That is one thing that may be a bit more different. We had two lines of storms yesterday, the first cluster of scattered storms and then a secondary line that produced some very strong winds along it, some areas of damage with that too. This time they may be a bit more separated. The first wave may be initial, and then the second wave may come with this front a little bit later in the evening and night. So that is one thing to notice as a difference here, and one thing to keep in mind. It may be something where you'll need that weather radio for sure to be able to wake you up Tuesday night. However, it's still a few days away. We're not telling you this information to scare you or to make you anxious about it. As we saw yesterday, there can be a lot of good outcomes even when things go pretty bad in the weather. Even though property can be damaged, there's many ways to keep yourself safe. And of course, we will bring you the latest as we know it. That's the whole goal here on the First Alert Storm Team, to provide you with the information you need. So for now, I'm going to leave it at that. We'll be providing additional updates on YouTube Live as the storm gets closer. Of course, kcrg.com will have the latest thoughts and feelings on our forecast, articles and videos there. And on KCRG TV9, of course, every time we're on a newscast and as we get closer, we'll give you the best that we know. Thanks for watching this evening.